Hi children, good morning. Welcome to today's social science class. In this video, I am going to explain about administration and consolidation under the Khaljis and Tughlaqs. The consolidation of a kingdom as vast as the Delhi Sultanate needed reliable governors and administrators. Rather than appointing aristocrats and landed chieftains as governors, the early Delhi sultans, especially Iltutmish, favored their special slaves purchased for military services called bandagan in Persian. They were carefully trained to man some of the most important political offices in the kingdom. Since they were totally dependent upon their masters, the sultan could trust and rely upon them. Slaves rather than sons. The Sultan were advised a slave whom one has brought up and promoted must be looked after for its needs a whole lifetime and good luck to find out a worthy and experienced slave. Wise men have said that a worthy and experienced slave is better than a son. The Galjis and Tughlaqs continued to use Bandagan and also raised people of humble birth who were often their clients to high political positions. Client means someone who is under the protection of another, a dependent or hanger on. They were appointed as generals and governors. However, this also introduced an element of political instability. Slaves and clients were loyal to their masters and patrons, but not their heirs. New sultans had their own servants. As a result, the accession of a new monarch often saw conflict between the old and the new nobility. The patronage of these humble people by the Delhi sultans also shocked many elites, and the authors of Persian Tawarikh criticized the Delhi sultans for appointing the law and based bond to high officers. Like the early sultans, the Galjis and Tughlaq monarchs appointed military commanders as governors of territories of varying size. These lands were called Ikta and their holder was called Iktadar or Mukti. The duty of the Muktis was to lead military campaigns and maintain law and order in their Iktas. In exchange for their military services, the Muktis collected the revenues of their assignments as salary. They also paid their soldiers from these revenues. Control over Muktis was most effective if their office was not inheritable and if they were assigned iktas for a short period of time before being shifted. These harsh conditions of service were rigorously imposed during the reigns of Alauddin Khalji and Muhammad Tughlaq. Accountants were appointed by the state to check the amount of revenue collected by the Muktis. Care was taken that the Mukti collected only the taxes prescribed by the state and that he kept the required number of soldiers. As the Delhi Sultans brought the hinterland of the cities under the control, they forced the landed chieftains, the Samandas, aristocrats, and rich landlords to accept their authority. Under Alauddin Khalji, the state brought the assessment and collection of land revenue under its own control. The rights of the local chieftains to levy taxes were cancelled and they were also forced to pay taxes. The Sultan's administrators measured the land and kept careful accounts. Some of the old chieftains and landlords served the Sultanate as revenue collectors and assessors. There were three types of taxes. First of all, taxes on cultivation called garage and amounting to about 50% of the peasant's produce. Second, the taxes on cattle and taxes on houses. It is important to remember that large part of the subcontinent remained outside the control of the Delhi sultans. It was difficult to control distant provinces like Bengal from Delhi, and soon after annexing southern India, the entire region became independent. Even the Gangatic plain, there were forest areas that Sultanate forts could not penetrate. Local chieftains established their roles in this region. Sometimes rulers like Alauddin Khalji and Muhammad Tughlaq could force their control in these areas but only for a short duration. Chieftains and their fortifications. Ibn Battuta, a 14th century traveler from Morocco, Africa, explained that chieftains sometimes fortified themselves in mountains in rocky, uneven, and rugged places as well as in bamboo groves. In India, the bamboo is not hollow, it is big and strong. The chieftains live in these forests and which serve them as ramparts, inside which are their cattle and their crops. There is also water from there within, that is rainwater which is collected there. Hence, they cannot be subdued except by the powerful armies who, entering these forests, cut down the bamboo with specially prepared instruments. The Mongols under Genghis Khan invaded Transoxiana in northeast Iran in 1219 and the Delhi Sultanate faced their onslaught soon after. Mongol attacks on the Delhi Sultanate increased during the region of Alauddin Khalji and in the early years of Muhammad Tughlaq's rule. This forced the two rulers to mobilize a large standing army in Delhi, which posed a huge administrative challenge. Let us see how the two sultans dealt with this. In Alauddin Khalji's period, Delhi was attacked twice. As a defensive measures, Alauddin Khalji raised a large standing army. The Sultanate was attacked in the early years of Muhammad Tughlaq's region. The Mongol army was defeated. Muhammad Tughlaq was confident about the strength of his army and his resources to plan an attack on Transoxiana. He therefore raised a large standing army. Alauddin constructed a new garrison town named Siri for his soldiers. Rather than constructing a new garrison town, the oldest of the four cities of Delhi, Delhi Iguna, was emptied of its residents and the soldiers garrisoned there. The residents of the old city were sent to the new capital of Daulatabad in the south. In Alauddin Khalji's regions, the soldiers had to feed. This was done through the produce collected as taxes from lands between Ganga and Yamuna. Taxes was fixed at 50% of the peasants' yield. In Tughlaq's period, produce from the same area was collected as taxes to feed the army. But to meet the expense of maintaining such a large number of soldiers, the Sultan levied additional taxes. This coincided with the famine in the area. The soldiers had to be paid. Alauddin chose to pay his soldiers salaries in cash rather than iktas. The soldiers would buy their supplies from merchants in Delhi, and it was thus feared that merchants would raise their prices. To stop this, Alauddin controlled the prices of goods in Delhi. Prices were carefully surveyed by officers, and merchants who did not sell at the prescribed rates were punished. Muhammad Tughlaq also paid his soldiers cash salaries, but instead of controlling prices, he used a token currency, somewhat like present day paper currency, but made out of cheap metals, not gold and silver. People in the 14th century did not trust these coins. They were very smart. They saved their gold and silver coins and paid all their taxes to the state with this token currency. This cheap currency could also be counterfeited easily. Alauddin's administrative measures were quite successful and chroniclers praised his regions for its cheap prices and efficient supplies of goods in the market. He successfully withstood the threat of Mongols' inventions. Muhammad Tughlaq's administrative measures were failure. His campaigns into Kashmir was a disaster. He then gave up his plans to invade Transoxiana and disbanded his large army. Meanwhile, his administrative measures created complications. The shifting of people to Daulatabad was resented. The raising of taxes and famine in the Ganga Yamuna belt led to widespread rebellion. And finally, the token currency had to be recalled. I'm going to wind up this video. Now you have to read this portion many times and underline important points. Then do given works. Thank you. Thank you to listening my class.